Will the Falcons offensive line be able to handle Vita Vea and this Bucs defensive front in their Week 7 matchup? We're talking trenches and keys to victory on today's Locked On Falcons.
You are Locked On Falcons, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, everyone, to another illustrious episode of the Locked On Falcons podcast, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. All you got to do is go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code in all lowercase LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. So, guys, if you don't know me, I'm your very humble host, Aaron Freeman. And as usual, I am joined at the end of the week by none other than Jarvis Davis of Locked On Sports Atlanta. You can also check out Jarvis on the Locked On Falcons postcast alongside myself and Tenitra Batiste. You can check out Jarvis with Tenitra on all the Atlanta football, Georgia, Braves, Hawks basketball parties that are on.
Party, baby.
Yeah, just partying all week long, not doing his job, just partying
yes.
on Locked On Sports Atlanta. And of course, you can also check him out on NFL, Locked On NFL's Kickoff Live every Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern. And today we're coming at you a little later than usual, just because I had some internet issues on Thursday night, but we're still coming at you as we do each and every day. Make sure you continue to make Locked On Falcons your first listen. And all you got to do to become an everydayer of this illustrious podcast is subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. So as we do here on Locked On Falcons at the end of the week, we have Jarvis come on and give his thoughts on this upcoming matchup. Of course, Week 7 versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Road Ritter, whatever you want to call it. But Jarvis, what is the key to victory for this Falcon team going on the road into Tampa Bay this weekend?
I'm gonna stay away from Road Ritter for now, and I'm gonna start with the offensive line, man. Like, I feel like there have been some communication breakdowns. Like, there's just been, if you just going back and looking at some of the game film from this past week, you just you recognize that there's like one person that can basically ruin the play, specifically up front. And when you talk about like that continuity that offensive line had last year, it was amazing. Like, those guys with the nonverbal communications. Hey, I got this guy. I'm gonna go up to the next level and all that stuff. All that stuff was really good last year, to the tune of them being the third best rushing team in the NFL. But I think this year they've had some breakdowns. And I think that, that came to fruition last week because, we talked about that leading up to the game as far as that defensive front and how those guys are really good. A lot of commotion was made about the 5-man front that they threw out there. I'm not surprised that they did that because, hey, they have the guys to do that, to be able to do that. They got some, Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen and Chase Young and John Ridgeway that they threw at the nose spot. Those guys were humming up front. And I think that the Falcons offensive line was taken advantage of. So I think this week, as you go on the road, and we got a little bit of news, a little bit of bright spot that Vita Vea did not practice yesterday. And so but he was limited on Wednesday and he did not practice on Thursday. So that may be a reason for those guys to say, you know what? We can block these guys because they haven't been able to do that. Vita Vea has his best game against the Falcons. So he has made those guys eat his lunch and eat their lunch and everybody's lunch on that side of the football. So I think it's up to the offensive line this week to help Desmond Ridder out because, like you said, he can't continue on this pace throwing the football like he is because the last 2 games he's thrown the ball 84 times. That is not a recipe for success for the Atlanta Falcons offense.
Yeah, I agree. Jarvis been talking about that all week long on the podcast. The Falcons trying to reestablish the run game. I feel like the pass protection has been much improved the last couple of weeks. I know the first month of the season we were like, what is going on with this pass protection? And it's mostly been a non-issue. They've given up some sacks, but a lot of that is just kind of like Desmond Ridder scrambling and then getting, tackled for a loss as opposed to like them giving up a ton of pressure. So hopefully that will we won't have to worry about that anymore. Although this Bucs front with Kalijah Kancey really kicked some butt last week against the Detroit Lions.
Pitt, yeah, man.
Yeah,
You know, out of Pitt,
so,
man.
Hey,
You know, those
it's cool
Pitt D
that
tackles, man. You know,
yeah,
what I'm saying?
but
Like,
he's going to be a challenge even if
outside
Vita Vea is out of the lineup, and we know those edge rushers have given this offensive line some problems over the years. So that's going to be a challenge for this offensive line. And as I mentioned before, like I feel like this offensive line is kind of the stabilizing force for this offense, right? When they have good games, everything just kind of calms down for this team. They can do the things that they want to do, whether that's running the football, whether that's throwing the football. And so we're still looking for more from this offensive line. They've made improvements, but they got challenges ahead, as you say, against Tampa Bay this week. They got Tennessee the following week. So we'll probably be talking about this a week from now as well. So if they can check this box against Tampa Bay, that will make us feel probably a little bit better going into next week. Although, we're going to have the same conversation about Jeffrey Simmons. Like, he ain't nobody blocking that dude. So it's just like,
man,
run away from him, please.
Yes, go away. Yes.
But yeah, we'll see. We'll see what's what with that. And we'll talk a little bit more about the Falcons' own defensive front and talking about whether or not this pass rush that we saw sort of, take over against Washington, is that going to be something that we can expect moving forward as well. And we'll get into all of that, guys, as we continue today's Locked On Falcons here with Jarvis Davis of Locked On Sports Atlanta. So, guys, I want to tell you about Jase Medical, who provide you with the Jase case. That includes 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use. And you may be wondering, like, why do I need to stock up on antibiotics? We live in a hectic world, guys, right? There are supply chain shortages. There are natural disasters. There's pandemics. There's, wars going on, across the world. So you just don't know what's going to happen. And no one should be stuck without access to these life-saving medications. So it doesn't hurt to be more prepared now than ever. Everyone should be empowered to care for themselves and their loved ones during the unexpected. And Jase Medical makes it easy. You can fill out a simple online form, and those potential life-saving antibiotics are going to be sent right to your door. And you can save $360, guys, by getting these life-saving medications from Jase Medical. Plus, you get an additional $20 off by using the code Locked On at checkout at jasemedical.com. That's Jase Medical, JASE medical.com, promo code Locked On. And guys, let's snap back into the action this season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And of course, we here love, the NFL and football and all this stuff, but it's not just football and the NFL that you can check out at FanDuel. It's pretty much anything that you possibly thought someone around the world was like, can you bet on this? Like, I'm sure they got like seahorse racing or something at FanDuel. I haven't really gone that deep into the website, but regardless of what you want to look at, make sure you check them out, because new customers right now get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. So if you want to place a $5 bet, on the NFL or seahorse racing or whatever, you're going to get $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. So there's no better time to join FanDuel than right now. And you can bet the spreads, the props, the over unders, all that and more. I'm sure there's some seahorse props that were out there that we haven't checked out, the Michael Jordan of seahorse racing or whatever it is. But all you got to do to find out if you're into seahorse racing or just want to check out the NFL stuff, then just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to kick off the NFL season. FanDuel is an official partner of the NFL. So as we continue today's episode here with Jarvis Davis of Locked On Sports Atlanta, I got to plug Jarvis's other things that he does beyond the Atlanta shows, which is, of course, NFL Kickoff Live each and every Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern time. So that's today for those of you that are checking this thing out on Friday. He is joined by Tanisha Batiste and Kyle Krabs. They give you the lowdown on the upcoming slate of NFL action. You're going to get betting tips, fantasy angles, all that and more. It's every Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern, Locked On NFL Kickoff Live, and it's across the entire Locked On network. So if you're already subscribed to Locked On Falcons or Locked On Sports Atlanta, you will be able to get to watch that show at 2 p.m. Eastern time. So make sure, if you haven't subscribed already to any of these Locked On shows, make sure you hit that subscribe button so that you can check out Jarvis each and every week on Locked On NFL Kickoff Live every Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern on any Locked On NFL YouTube channel. So Jarvis, we talked about the Falcons offensive line and their run game. you know, we always tend to focus on the trenches here. You know, we have an obsession. I don't know,
of course. Yeah.
but you know, last week
matters,
the Falcons got 5 sacks, and you know, watching the film, it did feel like a lot of that was probably owed to the thing that we thought it would be, which is Sam Howell's tendency to just kind of hold on to the football.
Mm-hmm.
But did you feel like that was the type of, you know, not necessarily you're going to get that type of quarterback play in every game, but maybe that's like a confidence booster for this pass rush to be like, okay, we can get home, we can do this thing, because we've been talking all season long about, hey, this defense looks really good, and if they can just get a little bit more pressure on the quarterback and start turning these pressures into sacks, you know, all of a sudden now we're talking about one of the better defenses in the NFL. So I'm just curious, where do you feel about the pass rush after this Washington game? Do you feel better about it? Do you feel about the same? Where are you at?
I think that, you know, when you look at just going through, just looking at some of the numbers as far as like sacks given up in the league, Washington Commanders are the worst team, you know. So, and the thing about that is, which is, I feel like it's promising, because there have been times where we've gone into games and we've had conversations where he's saying, hey, they should be able to take advantage of this porous offensive line. And then they go into the game and they don't. And I think that, you know, for them to, we come into this game and say, you know what? Sam Howell holds onto the football. The offensive line isn't that great. And for them to get 5 sacks, that is progress. And I think that when you think about, you pair that with how stout they are up against the run game, and you talk about that confidence, like, hey, we can do this. We can get home. We can do this. All we got to do is just continue to progress. And Ryan Nielsen even talked about that as well. It's like being able to develop during the season. Those are what you like to see. Like, yeah, they were affecting the quarterback, because we know from time to time, we know about, we're very familiar with that term. So for them to affect the quarterback, move them off the spot, you know, be able to be a defense that can get some stops when you need to get the ball back. And we saw that in the Washington Commanders game as well. And I feel like that is progression. That is something that you can continue. You can build on top of that. We talk about stacking games on the offensive side of football. Hey, you stacking the game where you matched your sack total in one game. Yeah, absolutely. And I think the most important thing within those sacks is when you got them. Like, right, they were very timely when you needed to stop and get the ball back, and you're trying and you're chasing points, you know, because, you know, you went for 2 and you got to score and get the 2-point conversion, you know, in order to just to tie the game up. There was to be able to perform or execute in that sense of urgency. That's the thing that is promising for me as well, just as much as being able to take advantage of a porous offensive line or a quarterback that holds onto the ball a little bit too long. So yeah, I definitely think they can continue to stack games like that. But, you know, with this week though, the Bucs have given up the least amount of sacks in the league. And I think that, you know, that kind of credit to the offensive line, but I think it's credit to Baker Mayfield as well, because he's been a little bit more mobile, using his legs a little bit more in this offense. And I think that, you know, that's something that the Falcons are going to have to be up for, because, hey, he's not going to hold on to it like Sam Howell did. So the counter move and all that stuff, that might not necessarily work. You might have to, you know, break your rush line and then go chase, you know, versus, hey, let me do this counter move because he's still sitting back there in the pocket and going down. So it's going to be a week-to-week adjustment, but I feel like they can make that because, hey, this defense is getting better and better every week, man.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because like the player that Sam Howell always got compared to was Baker Mayfield, because Baker Mayfield used to have a tendency to hold on to the ball a lot and take those sacks. And you're right, he hasn't been doing that as much. We love to get some regression this week if the Falcons can.
Baker's good for that too. He's good. He's good for that.
Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see what that happens. So I think the opportunity is there for this pass rush to get home again this week. If they can do that, they'll have some favorable matchups on the interior. I think that's where kind of the weakness of the Bucs offensive line is. Moving Tristan, you know, Tristan Wirfs is still one of the best tackles in the list. Like, okay, like wherever you put him, he's going to be good. I guess, you know, like you thought maybe there's going to be like a slow trend. Nope, no, he's still just as good. And then the guy that replaced him with Luke Gadecki, you know, has been pretty solid for them as well. He had your boy Aiden Hutchinson basically on a milk carton last week, because it was like he didn't do nothing last week, and it was like, wow. I haven't seen anybody do that to that dude this year, so that's impressive. So we'll see if the Falcons interior can sort of take care of business. We know Grady has a vendetta maybe against this Bucs team from last year.
For some strange reason.
We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see how that goes. And David Onyemata, I think, will have an opportunity to also get home. And I think, potentially Calais Campbell too, right? Because like now that he's got the 100 sack, he's not thinking about that anymore, right? He can just, again, not saying that was maybe holding him up or whatever, but potentially, who knows, right? He's so focused on like, gotta get this guy, gotta get the sack, and now he can just go out there and play free, and maybe that leads to improvements from this pass rush. And if that's the case, then that's exactly what the Falcons need, because we know the Bucs aren't much of a run team, right? This isn't a matchup like we talked about last week with Washington. Was like Washington can run the ball, they just choose not to run the ball, right? Yeah. The Bucs can't run the ball. I don't know.
Yeah, their run game is definitely poor. So that's why I have a little bit of a concern, because I feel like this is probably one of the best wide receiver groups that the Falcons are going to face this year. Because you're talking about Mike Evans, and like he's had some really good games against the Falcons in the past, and I throw Chris Godwin in there as well.
He's good too.
Working the slot, man. He's ate a little bit. Those guys got really full in Atlanta, a couple of times. So I think that this secondary is going to be tested, and I really feel, to that point, I really feel like Baker Mayfield, the game plan is to, hey, get the ball out of your hands and get the ball in your playmakers and let those guys make plays, because they have done it before. And so I think AJ Terrell and Jeff Okudah, they're gonna have a nice test on their hands. So I feel like they're up to the task. But like you said, because this is probably one of the better secondaries we've seen in the past few years on the Falcons defense, because Jeff Okudah is really coming on, man. He has really come on strong since he's come back. And I think Ryan Nielsen kind of reiterated that. He was just like, man, this dude has come back so fast. And like the play that he broke on early on in the game, it was just like, man, the secondary is rounded into shape, man. Outside of Richard Grant, he got to get his stuff together. But but those other three dead cats, man, like this is something that could be pretty special, man. I think that all the defensive line has to do is be able to take advantage of that, right, with that coverage. So yeah, this is going to be a big test this week for the Falcons secondary. But I feel like they're up to it, and I feel like helping them out by that defensive line continue to work your moves and get home, and don't let Baker get outside the pocket, because that can be very dangerous back there trying to cover 3-4 seconds with those guys, because we know how what type of playmakers they are.
Yeah, definitely. I'm a fan of Trey Palmer as well. They're sort of third receiver. He brings a lot of speed to that slot position. So that's gonna be a challenge for this team, because we haven't really seen a burner play that spot like that. So that's gonna be a challenge for D. Alford. But you're right with Jeff Okudah. Like I went into last week's game being like, I don't know. You got these Curtis Samuel, Jahan Dotson, Terry McLaurin, like those aren't really the guys that Jeff Okudah is like built to stop. Like he's more built to stop these bigger guys like a Mike Evans or whatever. But he balled last week, so that gives me a lot more confidence about this secondary's ability to match up, not just with physical bigger wide receivers because of all the press that they play, but also some of the quicker guys. McLaurin got him a couple of times, but Curtis Samuel and Jahan Dotson were pretty quiet in that game last week as well. So that gives me a little bit more confidence that they can handle a variety of matchups, not just one particular type. So we'll see how the Falcons secondary handles this Bucs pass catcher group, as well as whether or not the Falcons can get pressure on the quarterback, because we're not talking about Road Ritter today, but like I don't have a lot of confidence the Falcons going to score a lot of points against this Bucs defense. So we're going to need this defense to kind of keep a lid on this Bucs offense.
Turnovers,
just because like it's like you give up 14 points to the Bucs offense. Like I don't know if the Falcons offense is going to score more than 14 points in this game. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. But speaking of the secondary, the Falcons just cut Jaylinn Hawkins. They brought back Damiere Byrd. So it feels, I'm just want to pick your brain, Jarvis, on some of those recent roster moves, and we'll do that to wrap up today's Locked On Falcons. So I'm sure many of you guys right now have $10 in your pocket, and you would love an easy way to turn that $10 into $250, and you can with PrizePicks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. All you got to do is pick two or more players, pick more or less than their projected stats. And the more entries you make, the more money you can win, up to 25 times your money, right? PrizePicks, it's quick, it's easy. You can sit down and smash that more on Bijan Robinson's rushing projections, or you can, smash that less on, Desmond Ritter's passing projections, whatever mood you're in, pro, positive, optimistic, pessimistic, PrizePicks has you covered, and it's a fun way to turn $10 into $250. And all you got to do is go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the promo code LockedOnNFL, all in lowercase, for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL, and make sure you use that promo code LockedOnNFL. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. Now, Jarvis, good, bad, or in between, it's tough to root for your favorite football team when you're have an empty stomach, right? So why don't you just head on over to DoorDash and order some of your faves so that you don't have to deal with that problem, right? When the Falcons win, I want to order wings to celebrate. When the Falcons lose, I want to order wings as a pick-me-up. Basically, I just want to order wings. But, the best place to do that is, of course, on DoorDash. So find your faves and get 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and enter code LOCKED23. Subject to change, terms apply. That's 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and enter code LOCKED23. Don't forget to use that code LOCKED23, LOCKED23, for 50% off up to a $10 value on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and spend $15 or more. Subject to change, terms apply. So, Jarvis, wrapping up today's Locked On Falcons. And of course, if today's episode is not satisfying you on the amount of Jarvis Davis on this illustrious podcast, then of course you can get more of Jarvis Davis Sunday immediately after the game. He, myself, Tanitra Batiste will be doing a full postcast, right? We used to do 10-minute episodes on these podcasts, but now we're doing a full 30 now, guys.
We're buffet style, baby.
We're going deep, right? We're filling our bellies, on these podcasts. Not to mention, of course, you're getting the rapid reaction from myself as well here on the Locked On Falcons. Of course, you get that postcast on Locked On Sports Atlanta on YouTube. You get the audio version on Locked On Falcons feed as well. And then, later in the week, the next day, Jarvis, myself, Tanitra, Tori McElhaney will be back on Monday for that Atlanta football party to give you all the breakdown of that. So you will get all the reactions that you need about this Week 7 upcoming game on Locked On Sports Atlanta as well as Locked On Falcons. But Jarvis, let's talk about your reaction to the Falcons' recent roster moves. When the news broke on Tuesday, I think it was, that the Falcons were moving on from Jaylinn Hawkins, I'm just curious, what were your thoughts on that?
Wow, I was, me, man. I can be somewhat of a conspiracy theorist when you talk about roster moves and all that stuff because, Jake Matthews, they restructured this deal. They freed up some money. I was just like, oh, what are you about to go out and go get? They about to trade for Danielle Hunter. Let's go. And then now it's like, all right, Jaylinn Hawkins, why they cut him? They freed up $1.some million. Okay, all right, cool. Let's add a little more top. So now let's go get Danielle Hunter even more. But in all seriousness, though, I really feel like this was a move that freed up some more snaps for guys like DeMarco Hellams and Michael Abernathy. And I really got a chance to talk to DeMarco Hellams, and you can just really tell like he has a reference for Nick Saban and what he was able to teach him about playing safety on a big time level and on the college level, and how that has transferred into the NFL. Because we know that DeMarco Hellams has a knack for taking the ball away. And we know the more guys that they have on the field that can take the ball away, the more they're going to help them win the games, the more it's going to help them win. The offense have more possessions. And the more the offense has more possessions, the more opportunities they have to score and get it ball into the end zone. And I know that, and I think that DeMarco Hellams is the type of guy that could do that. And then Michael Abernathy, he's just been consistent. Just there. And, for him to get signed to that 53-man roster, you just kind of understand that, okay, Jaylinn Hawkins, your time might be up. And there's no offense to Jaylinn. It's just, hey, those guys have found some guys with a lot of value. They found guys with a lot of value. And that's what, when you're building out a roster, you want to build out that depth, with those late round picks. And that's what they've done. And I feel like, Jaylinn Hawkins is, I'm not surprised that he got immediately claimed on waivers. There were multiple teams that were looking at him or trying to get him, and the Chargers ended up doing that. So for me, it was, of course, I want to go to the all right, they're trying to set up something for this trade deadline, but that's the fan in me. But just kind of from a football standpoint, of you just understand that this is how the league works, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like most of the time, they draft you to replace you, or they sign you as an undrafted free agent to hopefully you can take one of those guys' spot that they did draft in those later rounds. So I think it was just a progression that, hey, they understood where these guys are right now, and they had to get them on this roster. And Jaylinn Hawkins was the unfortunate casualty of that.
Yeah. You saw a lot of those moves this offseason where you go back to that 2020 draft class where, they brought in guys to replace guys, right? You could look at Javon Gwynn potentially as a replacement for Matt Hennessy. You can look at DeMarco Hellams as a potential replacement for Jaylinn Hawkins. You can look at Nate Landman as a potential replacement for Michael Walker, right?
For Anderson. I'm sorry. What happened?
Oh,
my bad. My bad. Make a team. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
So so it felt, at some point the Falcons were going to move on from Jaylinn Hawkins. It did feel like he would have, a chance to contribute as a role player this year, and then they would just kind of let him walk in free agency. But I guess they probably saw some things from DeMarco Hellams early on this season that they were like, you know what, we can move on from him, free up this cap space, and carry that over to next year and not skip a beat. I think the challenge with losing someone like Jaylinn Hawkins is, I don't know how comfortable you are if Richie Grant or Jesse Bates is to go down for an extended period of time, whether DeMarco Hellams can step into a extended starting role at this point in time. And Jaylinn Hawkins, that was really the value that he brought because he had that experience. And you're like, okay, I know exactly what he can bring as a starter. Right. I don't know that with DeMarco Hellams, but that they seem to do all right with Nate Landman, replacing Michael Walker. So I think they're hoping that they'll do all right if that is the case. But last roster move, Jarvis, before we wrap up here, is familiar face. Falcons bringing back some speed at the wide receiver position, bringing back Damiere Byrd at that wide receiver spot. It seems like it's part of, with the Van Jefferson trade, it seems like the Falcons are realizing, maybe having all these power forwards is not, let's get some guards in here,
some diversity.
So that's what it feels like to me.
DEI move.
If that's what you thought when you saw that move.
Oh man, Scotty Miller days might be numbered. I mean, I know Desmond Ridder, man. I went back to watch that play where kind of like on this sideline, Desmond Ridder was throwing to his left to Kyle Pitts, man. That dude, Scotty Miller, was wide open. And I was just like, okay, so we not gonna pay attention to him, obviously. And I think that what he was brought in to do, to be that guy, to be the little cockroach type wide receiver. You got all these power forwards and everything like that. Yeah, man, you need a little diversity when it comes to, when you're putting together an offense that can put up some points. But you talk about the versatility and all that, and positionless football, yeah. But you still need certain types of guys when you talk about putting together a wide receiver group. And I think Van Jefferson is a product of that, and also bringing the guy, re-signing a guy like Damiere Byrd is a product of that as well, because it just doesn't seem like Ridder has the confidence in Miller to get open. Like I said, I pointed out an instant that he was open, really wide open. He chose to go to a guy that he felt like could make a play for him in Kyle Pitts. So I think the more and more guys that they bring in like this, and probably be done at this point, I would think. I think that this is a solid group you can go forward with, because, hey, Bird made a few plays for you with this regime. So it just got me to a point where it's like, all right, they brought Scotty Miller in, and all right, well, we're going to bring some other people in to make sure that we, and Van Jefferson showed that, hey, I can get open. He was open. And he was in his zone. That was 6 points if Ridder had put it in there right. So I think that, they want more of that. And I think that, and I wasn't surprised that they brought in Damiere Byrd as well.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how that goes. We'll see what it means for Scotty Miller. We'll see what it means for the rest of the wide receiver core moving forward. And hopefully we'll see some positives from, Ridder and that wide receiver core connecting beyond just him and Drake London this week. So we'll see how that all goes, guys. We'll continue to keep you covered here on Locked On Falcons, Locked On Falcons Postcast, on Locked On Sports Atlanta. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every